UFOs, punk rock, CIA agents with metal hands, and the trunk of an old Chevrolet that makes people evaporate. At first glance, the film Repo Man looks like cheap 80s trash, but behind the facade of this hooligan comedy hides a smart, ironic, and even angry film about 20th century America. You just don't notice it right away, if you notice it at all, so let's try to figure it out together. My name is Max Chikonia, and today in the Cine Underground segment, Alex Cox's cult film Repo Man. To understand why this film looks like it was shot in the last few dollars left and while suffering from a brutal hangover, you need to understand the time when it was made, 1984. And I don't mean Orwell's novel, although the irony is definitely there. I mean the real 1984 in Los Angeles. Picture that moment. The era of hippies, flowers, free love, and the hope that the world could be changed by a song was gone. The 60s were over, the paranoid 70s had passed, and the 80s had begun, the era of Ronald Reagan. This was the time of Reaganomics, neoliberalism and total, aggressive consumerism, rising unemployment, the active militarization of the police ahead of the Los Angeles Olympics, mass factory closures. On television screens, smiling preachers promised salvation in exchange for donations, and politicians promised security in exchange for obedience. The Cold War is at its peak. People live with a constant background feeling that tomorrow might simply not come, so you have to buy a microwave and a new Cadillac today. And it's in this context that punk appears, but not the punk of London in the 70s, angry, political, dangerous. British punk was born out of class rage and unemployment. It screamed at the state, the monarchy and the future. By 1984 in Los Angeles, punk rock itself is already in a strange state. It's losing its revolutionary nerve and turning into fashion, more comfortable, more spectacular and much more quickly tamed by the industry. The film was directed by an Englishman, which matters for the film's punk spirit, but we'll come back to the director later. Repo Man is a film about a generation that had found itself trapped. They don't believe in the system, in 9-to-6 jobs, mortgages or the American dream, but they also don't believe in protest, because they see that protest changes nothing. The main character, Otto, played by young Emilio Estevez, is not revolutionary, he's just a lost kid. He doesn't know what he wants, he only knows what he doesn't want. This film was made at a unique historical moment, when being against the system had itself become part of the system, and rebellion had turned into a product. Let me try to retell the plot. Although after watching the film, you'll understand why this retelling is pointless. So, there is a guy named Otto. He loses his job at a supermarket, his parents give all their money to a TV preacher, and his girlfriend cheats on him with his friend. Otto randomly meets Bud, an old hardened car repo man. Bud pulls him into this business. At the same time, a mad scientist is driving through the desert in a 1964 Chevrolet Malibu. In the trunk he is carrying something radioactive, most likely dead aliens. Or maybe it's the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. In short, it's not that important to the plot. Even though it may seem that nothing in this film's plot is really important at all. Everyone is hunting for this car, the government, rival repo man, some gangsters, and eventually all the roads cross. Alex Cox uses this strange and dangerous car as a MacGuffin, a plot hook. This glowing trunk is a reference to Kiss Me Deadly, a 1950s noir, and a kind of premonition of the briefcase from Pulp Fiction, basically just an excuse to make the characters move. What matters here is not whether someone reaches the car, what matters is how they live while looking for it. The film never explains the nature of the UFO at all. What's in the trunk? Aliens? Radiations? The souls of sinners? Doesn't matter, because the UFO here is a metaphor for the only thing that still has meaning in our meaningless world, that something more everyone is missing. Now let's talk about the man who created this chaos, Alex Cox. It's funny that Repo Man, this very American, very Los Angeles film, was made by a Brit. Foreigners in Hollywood often try to blend in. They try to make big movies to please the studios. Cox did the exact opposite. He looked at Los Angeles not as a dream factory, but as a giant dump. He didn't see palm trees and stars, but concrete interchanges, industrial zones, abandoned warehouses, and people living on the margins. Cox didn't respect rules, no studio discipline, the script was rewritten on the fly, actors improvised, and the budget was ridiculous. I can only imagine what the producers and Universal executives thought when they watched the footage. Let me stress this again. Repo Man is essentially not a script-driven film in the classical sense, but a collage. Cox takes pieces of different genre and tapes them together, not even trying to hide the seams. Watch how the film changes right in front of us. The first 10 minutes are a teen drama about a punk who gets fired from his job, then it turns into a workspace comedy about car repossessors, then into a UFO conspiracy story, then into an action movie with shootouts, and in the end into some kind of metaphysical parable. Visually, it all looked like a pure B-movie. Cox deliberately breaks out expectations. Just when you think, okay, this is a buddy movie about a mentor and a student, he kills that trope. As soon as you decide this is a detective story, he makes the detective line absurd. He didn't care about free act structure, he didn't care whether the audience would like the main character, and it's exactly this directorial arrogance, this complete lack of fear or failure, that keeps the film alive 40 years later. And I'm not talking about whether you like the film or not, in either case it works, just in a slightly unusual way. By the way, Repo Man is not really my kind of movie, but it still makes you want to understand it. Cox got the idea for his film from real life, when he worked part-time as an assistant to a car repo man, and many of the lines in the film were inspired by conversations with him. And here we come back to the fact that the Englishman Alex Cox delivers punk cinema. The world of the film lives by the rules of British punk. Everything is rotten, everything is temporary, the whole system belongs in the trash. Cox was clearly into punk, and you can feel it in the film, and in 1986 he went even further and released Sid and Nancy, about the relationship between punk legend Sid Vicious, frontman of the Sex Pistols, and his girlfriend Nancy Spungen. Cox was also one of those directors of the 1980s, I don't know how many there really were, who didn't just dislike Reagan, but openly made films against American foreign policy. A couple of years later he would make Walker, and that film would completely ruin his relationship with Universal. Roughly the same way he shuffled and mixed the plot, Cox treated the cast. He put an up-and-coming teen movie star, a veteran character actor, and real punk musicians into the same blender. Emilio Estevez, Otto. At the time of filming, Estevez was 22 years old, the son of Martin Sheen. He had already appeared in Coppola's The Outsiders and was on the verge of becoming a superstar. A year later, The Breakfast Club would be released, making him a core member of the Brat Pack. A quick note on the Brat Pack. It was an informal nickname for a group of young Hollywood actors who, in the mid-1980s, regularly appeared together in films about teenagers and young adults. The term appeared in 1985 after an article in New York Magazine and was initially more ironic, even insulting, than honorary. Let's call it a media label slapped onto suddenly popular actors in their early 20s. The unofficial core group included 5 or 6 people associated with John Hughes's films. For Estevez, the role in Repo Man was a risk. His agents begged him not to appear in this dirty, low-budget movie, but Estevez wanted to break his good boy image. This casting choice worked perfectly. The audience saw a familiar, likable face from teen magazines, but placed in a completely alien environment. Harry Dean Stanton, Bud. By 1984, Stanton was already a living legend of supporting roles. You'd seen him in Alien, The Godfather Part 2, Escape from New York. He was the face of old Hollywood, a man with the look of a tired cowboy. 1984 became the peak of his career. At the same time as Repo Man, Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas was released, where Stanton played the lead dramatic role. In Repo Man, he does what he does best. He plays cynicism. Cox allowed Stanton to rewrite dialogue, and many of Bud's lines are the actor's improvisations. It's Stanton who grounds the film, stopping it from turning into pure farce, or at least trying to. Tracy Walter, Miller. That very mechanic philosopher. Walter is a classic character actor you could spot in dozens of films, from Conan the Destroyer to Tim Burton's Batman. He specialized in playing weirdos and villain sidekicks. His monologue in Repo Man about a time machine became the film's calling card, even though it's basically just a pile of schizophrenic nonsense. But Walter delivered it with such seriousness that his nonsense starts to feel like the only truth in the film. One more important detail. To achieve authenticity, Cox cast real members of the punk scene in supporting roles. For example, Kevin, the nerdy guy with glasses whom everyone bullies, is played by Xander Schloss, the bassist of the band Circle Jerks. Other members of the band also appear in the film. They show up in the bar scene and perform music, a kind of meta joke. Originally, they even wanted to cast members of the Los Angeles punk band Fear in the main roles, but it didn't work out. A strange mix with equally strange chemistry. And a small, simple riddle for you. The Repo Men in the film are named Bud, Miller and Light. Does that ring any bells? And now we come to the most important part, the heart of the film, the work of the main characters. Repo Man is a person who repossesses property for unpaid debts, the one who takes a car from someone who couldn't pay their loan. The Repo Man is the sanitation worker of capitalism, the one who punishes poverty. But in Cox's film, Repo Men are portrayed as the last samurai, knights of the road, so to speak. Harry Dean Stanton's character, Bud, is the spiritual mentor of the film. He looks like a beaten dog, cynical to the core, but he has a code. "I never break into someone else's car for fun, I do it only for money," he says. In a world without morality, the only substitute for morality becomes professional ethics. Even if that profession is repossessing cars from debtors. Bud delivers the film's key line, a curse that hangs over the entire story: ordinary people. He hates them because they live in illusions. They take out loans they can't repay. They buy things they don't need. The Repo Man, according to the film, sees the truth. He sees the underside of society. The life of a Repo Man is always tense. This mantra repeats over and over. Otto thinks he's cool because he's outside the law, but in reality he's just a cog in the system. He's a mercenary for the banks. The philosophy of the film is about accepting the absurd. You're either an ordinary fucking person, living in a cycle of endless consumption, or you're a Repo Man who understands that this cycle ends in a dead end. This is a film where the only people with principles are the people without principles, a paradox that underpins the film's drama. And if you've made it this far, you are definitely interested in cinema underground. Write in the comments which film would fit this segment. Here we talk about strange, unusual, not very popular but always intriguing films. And of course, it's always a good idea to like the video and subscribe to the channel. One of the film's most tasty visual choices is its depiction of food. It's hard not to notice that when the characters eat or drink, there are no brands on the packaging. It simply says in blue letters on a white background, food or drink. In one scene, Otto eats from a can labeled food, meat with gravy. This isn't just a joke by the props department to avoid paying for licenses. It's an anti-capitalist gesture. Alex Cox shows us a world without identity. Around that time, generic products really did appear in US supermarkets, cheap, brandless goods, but Cox pushes this idea to the extreme. Generic products become a generic world, a universal world. Everything is the same. Alongside its topicality, this turned out to be a prediction of the future. We use apps that standardize design, marketplaces erase the faces of producers, and algorithms feed us content similar to what we've already seen. Repo Man shows a world where labels are no longer needed because the essence of the product doesn't matter, only consumption matters. This visual style creates a sense of sinister, sterile dystopia in the middle of grimy Los Angeles. You can't talk about Repo Man without talking about the music. Iggy Pop, Black Flag, Circle Jerks, The Plugs. Iggy Pop wrote the title theme specifically for the film, and it sets the tone from the very first second. It's pulsating, aggressive, but somehow also toy-like in rhythm. It's interesting how Cox uses music. In ordinary films, it emphasizes the emotion of a scene. Here, the music often contradicts the scene or exists alongside it. The Plugs wrote a score for the film, a mix of punk, surf and Latin motifs. In other words, the sound of Los Angeles itself, the sound of melting asphalt. There is a great scene where Otto hums TV Party by Black Flag. It's a song about people who have nothing to do but sit in front of the TV and drink beer, and it's the anthem of the film's characters. Punk in the film is not the energy of freedom like in music videos or commercials. It's sharp, irritated, often unpleasant. It's music that simply captures a state: anger, boredom, powerlessness. Even the use of Iggy Pop's music here doesn't work as a sign of grandeur, but as irony. It's not used to elevate, but as another element of the chaotic world where everything, including rebellion, has become a commodity. The film is full of quotes that fans have come to love. "Let's eat sushi and not pay for it." The campfire monologue, and many other lines and dialogues. The humor here is built on absurdity and awkwardness. The shootout scene in the store, for example, plays out as casually as if the characters had just come in to buy a fresh newspaper and a bottle of milk. The thing is, the humor rarely makes you laugh outright, it just highlights the madness of the world. This kind of humor would later appear in the Coen brothers films, when horror is presented as a normal part of everyday life. And if you strip away this ironic tone, you're left with something close to a horror film, or at least a social drama. We see the story of a boy without a family. His parents have abandoned him, giving all their money to a TV preacher. He has no friends and his girlfriend left him for someone else. We see a world where human life is worth less than a used Chevrolet, where people are killed casually, where the government tortures its citizens. Cox uses humor as anesthesia, letting us laugh at the horror. And this strange humor is one reason the film became a cult classic rather than a mainstream hit. When Repo Man was first released, it failed at the box office. Why? For the same reason I often mention in Cinema Underground, because it's impossible to sell. It's hard to present to a cold audience. Is it a comedy, science fiction or dystopia with cringe gags and a confusing plot? The film became cult only after it came out on VHS. It found its audience in basements, video rental shops, among the very outsiders it was made about. Why didn't it become as mainstream as Back to the Future or Ghostbusters? Because mainstream cinema needs to be easier to understand, and importantly, it has to give hope. Marty McFly fixes the mistakes of the past. The Ghostbusters save New York. Repo Man, on the other hand, is rich only in cynicism. The story of Repo Man wouldn't be complete without talking about what happened next with the franchise. And here we enter a zone of total confusion and lawsuits. For many years, fans begged Alex Cox to make a sequel, and in 2009 he did. Repo Chick, as Cox himself calls it, is a spiritual sequel. Instead of 80s punks, we have glamorous irises cut off from their inheritance. Instead of a nuclear threat, there's the 2008 mortgage crisis. The main character, wealthy, empty-headed pixie, becomes a repo agent to reclaim her luxurious lifestyle. Visual chaos. Cox shot the entire film on a green screen. Almost no real sets. Backgrounds are painted, perspective is distorted, everything looks like a cheap collage. It was a conscious choice to show the artificiality of the modern world, but to viewers it just looks like eye-searing low-budget trash. The films are not connected plot-wise, but the world is the same. Some actors from the original appear in different roles and the essence remains. Society is collapsing and everyone is chasing money and consumption. The film was panned by critics and misunderstood by fans. It was too bold an art experiment even for underground enthusiasts. But besides this spiritual sequel, the original Repo Man also has a fake sequel. Just a year after Repo Chick, a big-budget Hollywood film called Repo Man, plural, came out, starring Jude Law and Forest Whitaker. Because of the title, many viewers assumed it was a remake of Alex Cox's film, but it wasn't. It's a dark sci-fi story set in the future, where corporations sell artificial organs on credit. If you miss a payment, the Repo Man come and take your organs. In a way, both Repo Chick and Repo Man emerged from a legal dispute over the rights to the original Repo Man. The rights were jointly owned by Universal and Alex Cox, meaning no one could make a sequel without the other's consent. Cox had to rename his own sequel Repo Chick to avoid a legal war with Universal, even though he originally planned to use Man in the title. The studio wouldn't allow it. Universal, meanwhile, decided to call their film Repo Man, almost identical to the original, but plural. Cox was furious, publicly accusing the studio of stealing the title and misleading audiences to profit from the cult status of his work. The result is a paradoxical situation. We have Repo Chick, a film by the original director that preserves the spirit of madness but is too strange for mainstream audiences, and we have Repo Man, an expensive, flashy action film that stole the title but has nothing to do with the philosophy of the original. The irony, in the end, the system repossessed even the title of Alex Cox's own creation. And that's not all. Cox had planned a sequel back in the 90s, but when that didn't work out, he released a graphic novel called Waldo's Hawaiian Vacation. From the title you wouldn't know it's a Repo Man continuation, but it is. In the story, a 30-year-old Otto takes the name Waldo and works as a telemarketer. Ironic, right? The hero learns he has won a free trip to Hawaii and decides to go, only to constantly face bureaucratic obstacles. Even from this brief plot summary you can see that Cox never abandoned his critique of capitalism. Rumor has it that today Cox has finally reached an agreement to shoot a proper sequel. It will be called The Wages of Beer, and the punk energy will now spread through the modern world with the same Repo Man, only this time driving autonomous cars. And now we ourselves live in the world of this film. The theme of simulated rebellion has never been more relevant. We wear t-shirts with radical slogans soon by children in third world countries. We write angry posts on social media owned by mega corporations, a world of generic identities. People believe in chips and secret governments, while TV preachers have been replaced by online hustlers. Repo Man is a film about people who have already lost, but keep pretending they don't care. Repo Man ends strangely. Perhaps the idea was that the only way to win the game called modern society is to get out of the game, to stop being an ordinary person. It's a movie about a world where rebellion has become a job, a world where we are all repossessing something from each other: time, attention, emotions, money. This was Max Chkonia and Cine Underground. Watch good movies, or bad ones, the main thing is that you enjoy them. See you in the next video.